right. Hi, Jen. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I understand you met last week with our other dietitian, Sarah, and you guys talked a little bit about how to read labels.
Yep, we went over label reading and stuff.
Okay. Okay, great. So we're going to kind of take that information that you guys went over last week and we're going to expand it a little bit. So our goals for today are to talk a little bit about different types of fat and what it does in the body, and just being aware of that, how to make better food choices.
Okay.
Your doctor referred you to our office because of your recent open heart surgery.
Yes.
So it's really important for us to talk about the types of fat that you're eating because that can affect your blood cholesterol, which can affect heart health.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So when I talk about potentially needing to look at the types of fats in your diet, or what comes to mind?
Cutting out butter.
Yeah. That's a really good example. So there are actually 3 types of fats: trans fat, saturated fat, and unsaturated fat. So trans fats are the ones that are really not that great for you. They're solid at room temperature. They just don't do good things in the body. They lower your healthy HDL cholesterol and they raise your bad LDL cholesterol. So you can find trans fats naturally in some foods. There's a little bit in some meat and dairy, but for the most part, you're going to find those in processed foods. So basically, part of the processing, it just helps keep them shelf stable for longer, but the trade-off is they're not really that great for you.
Okay.
So the goal for trans fats really is to try to not have any of those at all.
Okay.
So when you guys went over label reading last week, did you talk at all about how to find trans fat on the label, or do you know where to find it?
We just went over total fat, but we didn't go over the kinds of fat.
Okay, great. So under the total fat on your label, it's going to break it out. Sometimes it will just have the saturated fat and trans fat, and then sometimes it will even further break it down into the other types that we're going to talk about. So just looking at the label, could you figure out where to find the trans fat information?
So it looks like it's just right under the total fat, and this says it has 0 grams.
Yes. Okay, so that's actually a really good thing to make a note of. So even if the label says 0% trans fat, if it has less than half of a gram of trans fat, it can technically still say that it's 0%.
Oh, okay.
So one important thing to do is to look in the ingredients list. And if it says partially hydrogenated oils at all in the ingredients list, that's actually the same thing as trans fat.
Oh,
so that's just something to be aware of. You want to be checking both the label, but then also the ingredients that are on.
Okay.
Okay? All right. So the next type of fat to be aware of, saturated fat. I'm sure you've heard of this.
Yeah, butter.
Butter! Right, so it's solid at room temperature. It's also not that great in your body. Basically what it does is it raises the unhealthy cholesterol. So the goal, so you can find saturated fat normally shows up in all of your meat products, butter, lard, but then also it can be in fried foods and baked foods that use things like butter and Crisco, things like that to make it. So the goal for both saturated fat and trans fat combined is to try to keep that under 3 grams per label.
Okay.
So if you have a can of soup, you want to make sure that the saturated fat and trans fat total on that label is going to be under 3 grams.
Okay.
And then for the whole day, the limit is 15 grams.
Okay.
Or less than that is better too.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so the next type of fat is unsaturated fats. And there's actually 2 different types of unsaturated fat. There's monounsaturated fat and polyunsaturated fat. These both do good things in the body. They help to lower the LDL, the unhealthy cholesterol.
Okay.
So that's great for your heart. You can do
yes.
that. So monounsaturated fats, you can find them in things like olive oil and peanuts, canola, avocado, any nuts and seeds, really, the mono. And then polyunsaturated fats, you can find those in sunflower, corn, soybeans, walnuts, flax seeds.
Okay.
And then fish is a really good source of your polyunsaturated fats.
Okay.
The benefits to eating fish is they have omega-3 is a polyunsaturated fat, and that actually is anti-inflammatory. So it can, it's good for your heart and your cardiovascular system. It has been shown to have a little bit of an effect on lowering blood pressure as well. All right, so the recommendation is if you can get 2 or more servings of fish in your diet a week, that will boost your good fat intake, and then also possibly replace maybe some of the less healthy choices. Okay? All right, so I guess the point of all this, it's important to note that we don't want you to take all of the dietary fat out of your diet. You do need some fat to stay healthy. You need it to absorb and use vitamins in the body. It helps cushion the organs in the body, and it's also in every cell in your body in the membrane. So we don't want you to totally cut out all the fat. It's just a matter of keeping it down.
And healthy fats.
Yeah, healthy fats into manageable levels. So the American Heart Association recommendation is 25 to 35% of your daily calories as fat. And what that looks like is about 50 to 70 grams. 50 to 75 grams total. So that includes all of the unsaturated fat as well as the saturated fats and trans fat, which hopefully we'll just have it at 0. Okay. All right. So do you have any questions so far? Or?
Well, I'm just wondering. I really love my tacos. That's kind of one of my favorite go-to foods.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, is there a way that I can still eat tacos and be on this new cardiac diet?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question, and that kind of transitions us to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is some healthy options.
Oh, good. Okay.
So you probably won't need to totally cut out beef. I mean, you're right on in assuming that that's going to be one of the
saturated fat.
Exactly. Yeah, that is a big source of saturated fat. One thing that you can do if you are set on eating beef, once you've cooked the beef, sauteed it, you want to make sure to really drain off the oil, but then you can also rinse it in hot water and then let that drain a little bit, and that will get even more of the fat off. And then you just re-season it and put it in your taco. Another option, too, is you can use ground turkey instead of beef. So
and that's healthier.
It's a more lean protein. So, in general, you want to be selecting cuts of meat that are more lean, so it will often say on the package. But then also just picking meats that don't have visible meat or visible fat on the outside. If you buy chicken, you want to make sure to take the skin off. That's a really big source of saturated fat. So as far as just cooking in general, it's usually better to bake as opposed to frying. So a lot of things that you might fry, you could look into just baking it instead. Most foods you're able to cook them both ways. So. And then when you are sautéing, you can sauté, and instead of using butter, which is tasty, just swapping that out with olive oil. In cooking, sometimes some recipes you may be able to swap out some of the butter for canola oil, which it's an oil and it's liquid at room temperature, so that's one of the unsaturated fats. Another thing to be aware of in some products, so like dairy products, so just kind of watching the fat content, again, using your label reading skills. So just look for the low-fat dairy products. 1% or fat-free milk. Yogurts as well. That it can be a pretty big source of saturated fat if you're not careful. And then, so possibly just maybe thinking about if you can take a couple of days out of the week where you're eating fish instead of red meat. Just being a little more conscious of, how many times a week are you eating those really concentrated sources of saturated fat, and what you could do to just kind of change it up a little bit and maybe try something new. And then in addition to cutting out the saturated fat, you're also getting the healthy fats, which are going to help to reduce your cholesterol.
Sounds good.
All right, so did you have any questions?
I think that's it.
Okay,
I think
so
that's all that I had.
I have a couple of handouts for you to take with you as
Okay.
reference because I know this is a lot of information.
Yeah.
So I did have one. This first handout is a little bit of a rundown on just reading the label again
Okay.
and the amounts to pay attention to. So your 5 grams of your total fat, 50 to 75 grams for the day total
okay.
fat. And then it just has a picture for reference too.
Okay,
So,
perfect.
and then I also have another handout that has just a list of the different types of fats and the
Okay.
sources. So that's kind of a quick, handy
Okay.
guide. You can even take it with you to the grocery store
Okay,
if you want.
yeah, that'd be good.
And then the last one that we have is just more heart healthy eating cooking tips.
Okay.
So there may even be a few on here that I didn't go over.
Okay, perfect.
So, okay. All right. Well, thank you again for meeting with me. If you have any questions at all, feel free to call the office, okay?
Okay, great. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Thank you.